Your Excellency, the Governor, Mr. Boyd McCleary, CMG, CBO, Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Ralph T. O'Neill, OBE, Premier and Minister of Finance, Tourism and Development of the Government of the Cayman Islands, Honorable W. McKeever Bush, OBE JP, Chief Minister of Anguilla, Honorable Hubert Hughes, Minister of Communications, Works and Labor for the Government of Montserrat, the Honorable Charles Kernan, Minister for Communications and Works, Government of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Julian Fraser, RA, Special Advisor to the in the Ministry of Finance, Government of Anguilla, Honorable Jerome Roberts. Territorial Representative for Government of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Vernon Malone. Cabinet Secretary, Cayman Islands Government, Mr. Orrit Connor. Permanent Secretary in the Deputy Governor's Office, Mr. David Archer, Government of the Virgin Islands. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Government of Anguilla, Ms. Kathleen Rogers. Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Communications and Works, Government of the VI, Mrs. Arlene Smith Thompson. Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health and Social Development, Mrs. Carolyn Stout-Igwe. Other members of the visiting delegations, senior public officers, clergy, members of the media, everyone, again, good morning. I'm Sandra Ward, and I'll be your chairman for this very brief opening ceremony. And some 20 years ago, or close to 20 years ago, when elected heads of British overseas territories had the vision to embrace a more strategic approach or a more coordinated approach to participating and contributing to the annual Overseas Territories Consultative Council meeting in London, there was a consensus among them that they should convene a preparatory meeting to discuss the issues of the day. I was reminded last evening when I heard Honorable Hubert Hughes speak, but I know that we had indeed hosted a meeting here, but he confirmed that the BVI did indeed host their first pre-OTCC meeting in 1994. So some 17 years later, we are hosting the second meeting. Coincidentally, Hubert Hughes was just elected for his first term to office in Anguilla as Chief Minister, and he also reminded us that that meeting was under the chairmanship of the late H. Lavity Stout. So we're here on Scrub Island today for the preparatory meeting ahead of the meeting in November in London. And at this time, I'm going to invite our Premier, the Honorable Ralph T. O'Neill, as we start today's program. Mr. O'Neill, can you please welcome him?
Good morning. Good morning. The protocol has been set, and I will accept that. And I would like to welcome all here this morning to this, what we call the pre-OTCC meeting. I would like to thank His Excellency the Governor, the BVI, Mr. Boyd McCleary, our Governor, who gave up some time this morning to be here with us. And tonight, the visitors will have the pleasure of being entertained at Government House. And I'm sure you have quite a lot to consume, both eat and drink. So thank you, Excellency, for extending that courtesy to our visitors and friends. I welcome all of you here to this meeting this morning. I know of the difficulties in getting here, and sometimes it takes too long to get here, when you have to stop and wait on planes, and the next thing you hear, they'll be 1 hour late, and that gets into 4 or 5 hours. But thank God that you're here, and to him be the praise and glory. You are on Scrub Island. And I remember when an American gentleman was trying to purchase this island. He had to get a license under the Alien Landholding Act. I happened to be minister at that time. I wondered to myself, I wonder if he really couldn't take it. Because this island, Scrub, was not only the name, but the physical features, and so very unfriendly. And I said, well, he must have got some money in his hand he wanted to get rid of. So I find it. In fact, the island was purchased from a local family years before that by an Englishman, Major Ian Major. And he requested the government of the day that they could agree to change the name from Scrub to Virgin Key. But the government of the day said, well, it's already the Virgin Islands and they don't need no separate island called the Virgin Islands. And so they refused to grant his request. And anyway, he continued to wrestle with it until it was sold by his real estate agent to an American. Unfortunately, the fellow died. I believe that they must have just finished the transaction, barely finished it, when he was called away. But his widow continued and got involved with other people. And they decided that it could be done. Unfortunately, our party got out of power, but the Democratic Party that took over the government encouraged the owners, and eventually this hotel here was completed. And it added, I think, 50 rooms or something more to our total accommodation rooms. Scrub Island, as I know it, was good for one thing. There were no quarries in the island. And at that time, even if you could afford to buy gravel from St. Croix, there was nothing to bring them in. There were no barges and so on. And Scrub Island was the quarry, not only for Tortola, but for St. Thomas, the US Virgin Islands. Both loads of gravel were collected from the beaches on the southern side, on the northern side, and shipped either to St. Thomas or to the surrounding islands to help in building homes. And Scrub had a type of stone. It was blue and it was hard. And the name locally was blue beach stone. When a fellow would go to a boat captain and said, I would like to bring a boatload of blue beach stone. You know, it was from Saba, and those stones, they were really, really good. And that is what Scrub was known for. As far as I know, not even the birds used to lay eggs here, like the booby bird and so on Ginger Island, that you can go and pick a nice mess of eggs. And so Scrub came into the limelight, and from what I have observed and see, I think the people running the business here are doing a very good job, and long may it continue. So we welcome you here to this island, one of the nature's little secrets, and we do extend to you the good wishes of our people. I know you'll get a chance to see some of the people as you travel from Rotom to Beef Island, and I understand that you will be going to Virgin Garden and around there tomorrow. But we have a very, it appears to be a short agenda, but it is a very important agenda, and there are some ticklish matters that we have to prepare for in November at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And these include matters like naturalization, matters of the framework for fiscal responsibility, and a few others. As you know, it was agreed unanimously some years ago that our meetings for the OTCCs will be held in London rather than rotated to territory once a year. And so we go up there, and we have blunt talking and frank talking, and everything is done in harmony and peace. And we have made some progress during the years. The relationship and the understanding of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the BVI and the other overseas territories has really developed nicely. And you know, you in a position where you can take up the phone and call the minister responsible for the overseas territories or some of the officers and get answers to questions. So we would like to mature this relationship and enhance it, because we believe it is good for us and them. Because one of the problems we found that very few of these people in the office would visit the overseas territory. Maybe we were too small and didn't know much about it. But I think that it's much better now, and the overseas territories are opening offices in London, and they their man in the office has very good contacts with the various officials in London, and this makes it all the easier. One thing we have been able to achieve is, for example, the cost of university education in Great Britain. It was about 4 times that of the English student who had resided in England, because what was applicable was that as long as they were out of England for a certain time, they came under the same umbrella like the overseas student. They had to pay the same rate and so on. And a lot of talking and discussion took place about that, and eventually that was sorted out. But there are other things that have happened too. And sometimes some premiers or chief ministers might have some little feeling. But if you look through the history of the Commonwealth, those from Canada and Australia and New Zealand, especially around the 1920s and 30s, they used to have some hot quarrels with the colonial office. So, you know, I think we can sometimes pat ourselves on the back. Well, our conduct is not as bad as Mackenzie King and those boys when they went up there. So it is getting better, and we hope that this is will continue to improve. We, as you know, the BVI, Cayman Islands, especially, they're concerned and involved in the financial services sector, and that is always they're always moving the boundary lines, and we have to keep abreast, and we do get assistance from the British Treasury sometimes, or most times. And if you look back, we can see when cotton faded out. My father was a big cotton planter, and all of a sudden, that went. We see sugar went out in the Leeward Islands and other West Indian islands. We see bananas went down, and we got to be very careful, and we got to praise our financial services industry and protect it as much as possible, and look for other things to diversify our economy with. We just can't continue to one milk cow. You got to have 3 or 4 more milk cows in the pasture, because you know, things change, and having these conferences and so on will help us to protect our industry and find other things that we can do. So this morning it is a great pleasure of mine to welcome you here on Scrub Island, and I hope that you had a good sleep last night, although you went to bed early. But perhaps you might get sleepy during the day, we don't know. But I hope that the 2 or 3 days here in Scrub Island will be pleasant, you will enjoy them, and that you will come back with your families and encourage other people to come and see. You know, I will finish now by saying that when I went to Cayman Islands the first time, I heard about go to hell and back, a place called hell. So I wondered what it was like, so I wanted to see it. So I went. On the way we passed the turtle farm, we stopped there. That was very interesting. And when I reached to hell and back, the same kind of stone the Cayman Islands was making a nice little pocket of money from, some sharp stones. They're just like a needle. I don't think they're bigger. And you cannot walk on it barefooted. And people go to see this place called Hell and Back. And I watch it. I say, but you know, we have the same thing in Virgin Islands. We have the same Hell and Back people. And one of these days, I am sure one of the young boys are going to develop that site, have people brought there, and add something else to the tourist business in Virgin Islands. So, thank you for that, Makiba. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to be here, and I hope that everything goes well with this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier O'Neill. I did introduce him as our Premier Minister of Finance, but I'm sure you figured out that he's also the Minister for Tourism as well, right? At this time, I will invite the Honourable Makiba Bush to give his remarks, and he'll speak on behalf of the overseas territories. Please welcome him.
Premier, other colleagues, Your Excellency, it's always good for me to come to the BBI. I have some old friends here, traveling to different British overseas territories with a meeting of peers and a plan of a common agenda for our annual summit with the United Kingdom is a highlight of my calendar each year. This summer, the lush and rolling terrain of the British Virgin Islands offers a particular eye-catching backdrop that I am sure will have a stimulating effect on discussions. And so, on behalf of the representatives of the overseas territories who are visiting, I would like to thank our colleague, our friend, Premier O'Neill and his government for the work that they have put into arranging these sessions. When I travel to particularly our overseas territories, I have to marvel at what I find. Because the one thing I've tried to do in my time is to pay attention to our history, where we've come from. That I know is important in my life, to know where I've come from. And when I visit, I have to think that's how well we've done, regardless of which government. We've had our ups and downs, but we have come a long way. There is a there is an advertisement, albeit for a cigarette, which I never promote, but it says, we've come a long way, baby. And we have done that through amidst all sorts of challenges, from the elements to international pressures, to local issues at home. We have done extremely well. So, I like to say at home that if I'm happen to put my armor down at any stage, let those who want to take it up, let those, the thing the Bible says, who put it on his armor, not boast as those that take it off. So Brother Ralph, I want to congratulate you on the changes for good that I've seen here in this little territory. When you think, first time I came, we had a very small little airport. And today, you have one that is comparable to any of ours. You have work yet to do, I know. As Minister of Tourism, we want that to move. And I should say to you, in the interest of tourism, move. Let nothing stop you from doing what is right for your people. It is often asserted that the overseas territories are rivals, though, in many ways. And Brother Ralph, you don't really want a hell here. I believe it is impossible to deny that there is also a strong bond, as I have said, between us. This is fueled by the undeniable similarities between our history, our governments, our economies, our cultures, and our peoples. As small island developing nations that have yet to achieve statehood, uniting around such commonalities is our best hope for survival in this globalized world that is dominated by huge industrial powers. These three overseas territories consultative council meetings are invaluable in that they allow us to develop an agenda around shared governance issues prior to meeting United Kingdom representatives later in the year. Invariably, our discussions further modernize and strengthen the bonds of our friendship. A particular challenge which we all still face and which may very well dominate discussions is that nearly 3 years after the onset of the most recent global financial crisis, we are all still feeling its effect, as is the rest of the world, particularly in Europe, particularly United Kingdom, as we see the new coalition government struggle with various issues. Yet as the Foote report in 2009 observed, the economies of the United Kingdom and its overseas territories are closely interlinked. For this reason, close cooperation between all concerned parties must invariably prove the best solution to our joint challenges. But even in that, there is a challenge. When I say cooperation, I want to make clear that I mean working together with a considerable degree of parity to build consensus, achieve mutual interests. I think I can speak for all the overseas territories when I say that we much appreciate the United Kingdom's oft-voiced concern for governance in our countries. At the same time, the old cliche still rings true. It is better to teach a man to fish than to give him the food, and by so doing encourage his dependence on your goodwill. For this reason, we welcome and value offers of technical training in any area of mutually agreed need. Less welcome are unilateral assertions of what those needs may be. I still appreciate and always says to my governor and says to the United Kingdom, leave us alone to do what we do best. Don't ask if we can do it. Just think of where we came from. Just think of where we came from nothing to what we have. And I say, we built this city, and we will continue to do it. All we need is not for you to handcuff us. All we need is for the United Kingdom, and perhaps others, friendly countries, to help us, show us the way. But by showing us the way, do not handcuff us. Because the same good governance, I don't care how people feel when it comes to that, because these are issues strong to my mind. The same good governance for 60 million people will not always determine the facts of what is good governance in my island. Culture is different, and many other things differentiate us. Just recently, the OECD was in Cayman last week, and our territories performed well. I keep saying that our regulatory regimes are in better condition than those who want us regulated or who tell us to be regulated. But all of us small territories have to realize and never forget that metropolitan jurisdictions are our competitors. We are in the same business. We are not in the cotton business anymore. We are not in the banana business anymore. We are in tourism, medical tourism. We are in financial services. And so, apart from tax issues, there is still those issues of business, of attracting business. And so we are in competition. And we should never forget that, and we should never stop making the United Kingdom and those metropolitan jurisdictions know that. I'm always comfortable and comforted when I go to the UK or the European Union, that while they are telling us to be good boys, our records are totally in good order with an impeccable regulatory regime, and theirs are not, and the facts bear it out. And so I'm comforted that our overseas territories, in the halls of openness and transparency, in the international arena, stands good. We are always grateful to the UK for their oversight. As often, all children need care and protection, but it must be a partnership. Matters like the new financial reform agreement is important for our own credibility. For while the UK and others will keep looking and judging us and even making perception look like reality, in our own heart of hearts, we must know that our hearts are pure and our hands are clean. And that way the UK can look and the rest of the world can judge that that is all that happened, because we have taken the initiative to make ourselves credible. That's one thing I find in the new agreement. So accordingly, over the next few days, let us all bear in mind that we are the overseas territories' best advocates. Particularly the four of us present. We don't have Bermuda with us, nor Turks and Caicos with us. But all of us are up front the premiers, the chief ministers, and other leaders of the territories. And those who covet that position better understand that you're only up front to be shot first. But, gentlemen, we are our own best advocates. Let us also remember that our voices will always be strongest when they are shared and steadfast. Again, I want to thank my own colleagues, our senior colleague. I never interfere with local politics, but I can tell the people of the British Virgin Islands that over the years that I have known the Premier, there has been no stronger voice for the British Virgin Islands than Ralph O'Neill's. I have worked across several governments, and all of them have performed well. But I have sat with Ralph when he had to combat, cajole, be kind to, sometimes I believe more than he wanted to be. But the British Virgin Islands have always been well represented by Ralph O'Neill. I think I better stop there, unless you think I'm campaigning for something. I want to say, I'm not. I want to say that, firstly, I'm a Caribbean man. My own roots go back to Jamaica. I'm proud of where we've come from. I'm proud of where our islands have come from, what we've done for our people. What we really need to do, colleagues, those of us who are elected in this room, is to let our young people understand where we've come from and just how much they have gained and how much the country has done for them. How much more we can do? Well, let's put our hands and hearts together for it. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Premier Bush, for your remarks and speaking on behalf of the other overseas territories. Well, that actually brings us to the end of this open ceremony for this morning. So I would like to thank you all for attending, and I wish you a very blessed and productive day.